Hey, good evening, everybody. How are you? Hope everyone's doing well. I am Brett L. Pape. That's Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, how you feeling today?
Feeling awesome, man. Was in Vegas first couple days of the week to see some customers, and drove from Vegas down to Southern Cal out here in beautiful Ontario, California, which is not quite Huntington Beach or San Diego, but it is what it is, man. You do what you got to do for work.
Hey, don't talk too bad about it. I'm like a hop, skip, and a jump away from you, so don't
That's
start
right.
ragging our area too bad.
I forget how close I am to you right now. That's right.
All right, hey, let's get right into the. Actually, before we get into the news and notes and injuries, if you guys can all do us a huge favor, just go down there, hit the subscribe, hit the like button, and really appreciate it. Also, Sunday mornings, 8:30 Pacific time, hour and a half before kickoff, we go live. We get to everyone start sit questions and also break down each game with our own winners and losers while also giving you start sit for each game. But today, it's all about news and notes. So let's jump right into it. No bigger news right now than Davante Adams. Obviously, last week you heard some issues with business decisions being made. You heard, the coach Antonio Pierce saying that business decisions were made. Business decisions will be made by us. Now it looks like maybe that's what's happening. Davante Adams told me he'd prefer to be traded to finish out the year. New York Jets seem like the likely choice of him going there with obviously the ties to Aaron Rodgers and such. But Coach, what do you think? Where could you see him? Is there any hope for the Dallas Cowboys to pick him up? And what do you think is the best fit for Davante Adams?
Yeah, I think as a Cowboys fan, yeah, on paper you'd love to see it, right? You compare him up with CeeDee Lamb, and they've got the issues with Micah Parsons, Demarcus Lawrence on the D line, of course, no running game. So what do? You bring in a wide receiver and you throw the rock around a little bit. But the reality is Dallas can't be in play. They're not in play. If you weren't going to play Derrick Henry, I think it was Adam Schefter that said it, you're certainly not going to be able to pay Davante Adams. So I think that talk needs to stop. And this is hard for me, but Jets are a logical choice because of Aaron Rodgers, the history there, and right. But for me, man, I'd love to see him in Washington. If there was a way to get him in Washington with the Commanders, with him and Terry McLaurin and what they're doing, Brian Robinson, the run game, and obviously we know that Jaden Daniels is having a historic start to the season this year as a rookie. But it'd be really fun to see him in Washington, not as a Cowboys fan, but as a football fan. It'd be a lot of fun to see him in Washington.
I'll tell you that Washington team has looked very impressive the last
Yep.
couple of weeks, and you being a NFC East team, the start, or I should say, them getting to this point, I mean, it looks very reminiscent of what we saw last year with the Houston
In
Texans.
Houston. Yep. Yeah, I mean, their offensive line, you look at the PFF grades, and a lot of people want to make fun of PFF, but they're one of the best at grading offensive linemen. And that offensive line in Washington is absolutely hammering people. I mean, they're doing such a great job of keeping him clean and what they're doing on the run game that's a huge advantage as an NFL rookie quarterback when you've got an offensive line that can protect you.
Well, they certainly have had that the first 4 weeks. Let's move on to our first injury, and this is the one that obviously I have him a lot in Dynasty and a little bit in redraft, and that's Rashee Rice. Early on, he got hurt in the game trying to make a tackle after Patrick Mahomes' interception. Early on, it seemed that this was going to be a devastating ACL type of injury, and you're looking at not having him for the rest of the year. But, they always say no news is good news, and we've gotten no news out of it other than it doesn't look like it's an ACL injury. Best case scenario, you could be a Puka, 4 to 6 week type of thing. Worst case scenario, you may not see Rashee Rice until, he's got a suspension coming, and all the legal people seem to think that would be at the start of the 2025 season where that would take place. So we could not see Rashee Rice until week 7 of 2025. Your thoughts on Rashee Rice and the loss of him to the Kansas City offense?
Yeah, I think it's a devastating blow. I mean, there's obviously Patrick Mahomes off to a slow start in comparison to seasons past, but what they've done with Rashee Rice on offense, a lot of the motion and kind of utilizing him in the Travis Kelce role, a lot of option routes and his ability to, both pre and post snap and what they're doing there to get him touches and manufacture touches, which some teams in the NFL seem to struggle to do. But wide receiver 2 in PPR going to last week. And now, Travis Kelce had a bounce back, his best game of the season last week. I think you're going to see them rely on him a little bit more. I still think Xavier Worthy has got a lot to prove, still getting only about 3 touches per game. But I think Justin Watson's going to get a real opportunity here too. And Of course, Juju, man, it's a massive blow to lose a guy like Rashee Rice, who's just absolutely dynamic and explosive with what he can do, not only as a route runner, but after the catch with the ball in his hands.
Hopefully, hopefully the no news over the last couple of days leads to us hearing that'll be back at some point this year.
Yep.
Moving on to the next one, that's Anthony Richardson. Suffered what was described as a hip injury during the game last weekend with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Left the game. Joe Flacco came in. You saw an uptick in Michael Pittman's performance. Josh Downs has looked good since he's gotten back. So, I know a lot of fantasy people probably like to see Joe Flacco stay in, but Anthony has been listed as a day-to-day with the injury. He was a limited participant. And for his growth and development, you got to get him back on the field. Your thoughts on Anthony Richardson?
Yeah, you do. I think I read something the other day. He's got like 20 starts between high school, college, and the pros. I mean, and so you do. You need to get him real game reps. And we know as a fantasy player, he's extremely dynamic, but a great fantasy player doesn't always translate necessarily into being a great football player. And there's a lot of growth, I think, with A-Rich you have to have. But Michael Pittman, 6 grabs, 113 yards last week. Josh Downs, 8 grabs for 82 yards and a touchdown. You talked about him. He's looked good since he's come back from the injury. I think if you're in the wide receiver room, there's a part of you inside that says, man, I would love to see Joe Flacco out here winging the football. But as a franchise, you want your franchise quarterback playing and getting reps. And so hopefully A-Rich gets healthy and is able to play this week. But if not, I'm ready to fire up Michael Pittman and both Josh Downs in my fantasy lineups.
Moving on, and we were going to go talk about a couple other guys, but let's just move a guy up on the list since he's also with the Indianapolis Colts, and that's running back Jonathan Taylor. Did not participate at today's practice, suffered what was described as a mild high ankle injury in the win over the Steelers, left the game. Trey Sermon came in. I kind of, over the years that we've been doing this podcast, this is year 5. We've done this Wednesday show throughout that, and you tend to look at the injury reports when you got to put out content on injuries. And what I've noticed over the last year is if you're not practicing on Thursday, if you can't get a full participant on Thursday, it doesn't look good. So he's obviously someone to monitor, but if he isn't unable to go this week, wheels up on Trey Sermon.
Yeah, JT's had more than 80 yards rushing in 3 consecutive games, with 2 of those games over 100 yards. He's got 426 total yards on the season with 4 touchdowns. So that's a big loss if he can't go. Trey Sermon's going to have to step up. Hasn't done a whole lot in his career since entering the NFL a few years ago, but he's going to get an opportunity, and there's a volume play there.
All right, hey, we do have some good news, and that's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb returned to practice this week. He is now has a 3-week practice window in which he can come back. And the good news is that he was a limited participant. I wouldn't expect to see him this week, but it looks like Nick Chubb is about to return for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, hey, and that's super exciting. I think a lot of us that had Jerome Ford on our fantasy teams were excited for him to get some volume, but there's a big difference between him and what Nick Chubb brings you. Ford's 39 carries for 203 yards, only seen the touch in the end zone once. They're 27th in scoring and 26th in running the football. So that offensive line in Cleveland, as great as we think it was on paper, they have not lived up to the hype, have not played well. And of course, Deshaun Watson has struggled. So I think Nick Chubb certainly gives that offense a big bump.
You talked about the 5 yards of carry for Jerome Ford, but what he doesn't bring is the home run ability, or at least we haven't seen it as of yet. And that hopefully with the Nick Chubb, you can get that. Moving on, David Njoku. And the reason why I had to do it like that is because Coach and I were going through these guys before the show, and I just could not get his name right. But nevertheless, he's a limited participant today after missing last week with an ankle injury, and obviously with the tight end landscape, with the lack of performers and with the multiple injuries, it would be nice to get him back in the lineup this week.
Yeah, 81 grabs for 882 yards on 123 targets last season. We finally saw the athleticism and how they used him in the offense and what he does after the catch. He's an explosive player, so it's definitely a big tick up for them if they can get him back in that offense.
Next up, wide receiver Christian Watson with the Green Bay Packers suffered looked like it could be a little bit of everything. If you saw that tackle on that player, not a tackle, he was going up for a ball, one of those jump balls, and kind of came down wrong, and it didn't look good. And did not participate at today's practice. He's listed as doubtful. He looks like he's at least 2 to 3 weeks before he'll be back. Hasn't done much with when you look at his performance, but he's still a big part of that offense.
Yeah, and hey, look, it's Jaden Reed and Dontavion Wicks throughout the season are both at 20% target share on the year. Romeo Dobbs has gotten the most snaps played this year. Christian Watson has been on the field, but we're not seeing the production. I think this offense is going to be just fine because they've got three other capable guys that can play, and the three guys that we just mentioned. But you like to see what he does in the vertical game and what he does in contested catches. I mean, Christian Watson, and then after the catch, we talked about that earlier too. What he can do with the ball in his hands. So it is a miss. You're going to miss a guy like that and what he does to the offense and how he can take the top off and get guys, especially on a too high look. He can get a safety he can occupy safety and open things up underneath for Kraft and Jaden Reed. But hopefully he's going to get healthy and be back on the field here soon.
Next up, Taysom Hill, tight end, running back, quarterback, whatever you want to call him, left Sunday's game with what was described as a rib injury. It's now called abdomen, but regardless, had 2 touchdowns in the game. And for fantasy, he's a tough guy because you can get a game like that where he'll get 2 rushing touchdowns from 2 yards out, but then you can also get a big 0. But Taysom Hill out. They don't play till Monday, so there's a good shot he could still make it. If he doesn't come back, how does that affect both fantasy and how does it affect the New Orleans Saints offense?
Yeah, Taysom Hill's that guy, man. If you've got him and you drafted him, and whether he's not throwing the ball like he has in seasons past, but what he does in the red zone and what he does in 3rd and short and in the run game. I mean, last week I sat him in one of my lineups because I felt like Tucker Kraft was a better volume play. And Taysom Hill, what does he get? 2 touchdowns last week and looked like a champ, man. And what he does in the run game as a blocker, I think, is very underrated. People don't talk about it enough. I would certainly love to see Taysom Hill with a Dallas Cowboy helmet on. I can tell you that.
Yeah. You would like to have them all.
I would like to have them all. We need them all.
You certainly do. Running back Cordell Patterson, ankle injury. Patterson left on a cart in Sunday's game with the Colts. That doesn't sound good. Did not participate today. Had a bigger role last week with Jaylen Warren being out. It looks like they're just going to flip-flop. One guy was in last week. The other guy will be in this week. Mike Tomlin said that it looks like Jaylen Warren's got a good shot of playing against the Cowboys. Thoughts on Cordell and on their offense?
He looked great last week. 6 carries, 43 yards. He also had another 2 grabs for 19 yards. And, of course, the injury happened. And there was a series or two he didn't get, Najee Harris, and I've got Najee Harris on a couple teams, wasn't getting the reps. They were feeding the hot hand. And I think had he been able to stay healthy, I think he would have seen who knows? I think he may have gotten a touchdown. And I think he definitely would have hit over 65 rushing yards in that game if he'd have been able to keep playing.
Next up, and this one hurts because whenever you see a rookie come in and do great things, you want to see it to continue. You want it to continue. And that's Malik Neighbors. He's still in the concussion protocol, questionable for week 5, did not practice today. Coach, he's their whole offense. If they don't have him, obviously that's good news for, Wan'Dale Robinson, but for the offense, and I mean, it's not going to be much reason to watch that offense at all.
No, it's not. And Wan'Dale Robinson, part of what makes him as good as he is one, he plays a lot, in the short, underneath, and under coverage type stuff. And Malik Neighbors helps take some of that coverage to his side of the field. His teams roll coverage to Malik Neighbors, and it doesn't matter. Malik Neighbors can beat you in man coverage. He can beat you against the press. He can beat you in zone. And he's very dynamic with the football. But Wan'Dale Robinson, last week, 11 grabs for 71 yards against my Dallas Cowboys. He's been targeted more than 8 times in 3 out of 4 games. He's got 38 targets on the season with 26 grabs for 194 yards, but he's just got the 1 touchdown. I think that's the difference between him. He's going to get you some catches. He's almost like a Jacoby Myers, right? He can get you the targets, he can get you the grabs, but he's not going to find the end zone very often. So, yeah, Malik Neighbors is out. Robinson's really your only weapon, and that's all underneath stuff. The A-dot's not great, but
they haven't played since last Thursday. You mentioned the Cowboy game, and that's when they played. So we all kind of hoped that couple extra days would help Malik get out of concussion protocol. So certainly something still to monitor going forward. Next up, Joe Mixon. He returned to practice last week on a limited basis. However, he was back to a non-participant today, and it's not looking good for him coming into what looks like one of the best games on the slate against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, tough matchup if he's not there, man, facing the Bills. I mean, that's a big one that could have playoff implications in terms of seeding, where you could go from a 1 seed to a 4 seed, right? If you're winning your division, I think both those teams are going to win their division this year. But Cam Akers last week, I know a lot of people were hoping the volume was going to be there. A lot of people thought he was a good play. Spent some fab on him. 13 carries for 53 yards was not bad, but no targets and no receptions in the passing game. And obviously Joe Mixon's a guy that not only gets you tough yards, but he's also very relevant in the passing game. So let's hope, it's tough. I'm not a big Cam Akers guy. I was trying to pound the gavel for him last week because I thought the volume was going to be there, but the overall production just was not there.
I was a Cam Akers guy, and yet two Achilles injuries and all that. After that rookie year where he came on late for the Rams and really showed in the playoffs, he kind of hoped that we would see more out of him, and then you just kept getting injury after injury. And it's nice just to see that he's been able to get back on the field. Moving on, tight end Evan Ingram has not played since suffering a pregame hamstring injury in week 2, but he was a limited participant today. So it could be good news. We could have Evan back this week. And their offense certainly needs him, Coach.
They do. I mean, last season you saw Evan Ingram really take off, and Trevor Lawrence looks to him, especially in third down situations. He does a great job working, especially in the seams. He's a good vertical guy. He's also going to give you something after the catch. But Brenton Strange is a guy that I'm high on out of Penn State. But 8 grabs on 14 targets for 96 yards and a score on the season in total over the last 3 games. Didn't get anything in week 1 with Evan Ingram playing, but Evan Ingram he's a weapon in that offense. Christian Kirk is now coming up a little bit. We love Brian Thomas Jr. We talk about him quite a bit, but you can add that third piece in that offense. No matter what the defense does, they're wrong, right? Because you can go to one of those 3 guys. Evan Ingram brings that for that offense. And I think if he's in the lineup, I think you start to see Trevor Lawrence take another step, and because he has not looked good so far this season.
All righty, that's it for our news and injuries. Let's move on. Thursday night start and sit. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 3-1 at the Atlanta Falcons 2-2. Coach, I got the Buccaneers winning this one 28-24. Just feel like, they had their hiccup a couple weeks ago. They look good again against Philadelphia. So it's the Buccaneers for me.
Yeah, I've got Buccaneers going on the road in NFC South battle. I've got them winning 23-21. I agree with you. I think what they're doing offensively, I just don't think the Falcons are there offensively. I think Kirk Cousins is like QB 18 on the season. We're not seeing what we thought out of him. Kyle Pitts isn't giving you much. I've got Tampa Bay in this one.
Tampa Bay start and sit, Coach. That's the home team, or excuse me, that's the road team. So you are up. Let me get into the offense and defense first. Tampa Bay offense ranking 11th in scoring, 25th in rushing, 9th in passing. Atlanta defense scoring 14th in the league, 25th in rushing yards allowed, and 13th in passing yards. Who are we starting for Tampa Bay in this one, Coach?
Yeah, so let's start in the quarterback room with Baker Mayfield. We got him as QB 10 going into this week. On the season, he's completed 70% of his passes for 984 yards and 8 touchdowns with just 2 interceptions. And he's added 2 rushing touchdowns. Last week in the win over the Eagles, he looked very good, 30 of 47, 347 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's the overall QB3 on the season. He's absolutely a start this week for me against Atlanta. Go in the running back room, Rashad White. We've got him at RB24 this week. You and I talked about this before the show. He has not had more than 10 carries in a game since week 1 and has not surpassed 50 yards rushing in any game this season. He's also not found the end zone in 2024. Last week, we saw his snap count a season low 58%, while Bucky Irving saw a season high 42%. To me, it's tough. I got to choose between the two. I'm probably starting Bucky Irving over Rashad White. I think the time is coming. We're getting into week 5. If you look at Bucky Irving, they both had 10 carries for 49 yards last week. The difference is Bucky Irving found the end zone and got 3 carries in the red zone. So I like Bucky Irving, especially I know that Rashad White's been the receiving back. Bucky Irving is very capable. So I actually like Bucky Irving over Rashad White. Neither one of those guys are a must start, but depending on your lineup, I'm confident in Bucky Irving if you got to play him. And then in the wide receiver room, I love Chris Godwin this year. We talked about this before the season started. He was a full-time going back to the slot. We thought that was going to be great for him. He's wide receiver 5 on the season. He's had at least 8 targets and 6 grabs in every game this season, so he's a start for me. And then Mike Evans, a wide receiver 15 on the season. Limited practice on Tuesday on the hamstring. I didn't get a chance to look before we got on the show because, as you know, I was driving today. But after finishing week 3 with a season low in targets and receptions, he bounced back last week with 8 grabs on 14 targets for 94 yards and a score. Very promising for a guy who, if he can get to 1,000 yards this year, will tie Jerry Rice's record for 11 consecutive seasons at 1,000 yards. Not only that, he's only been in the league for 11 years. That'll be 1,000 yards. He's got to average 61 yards a game the rest of the way. I think Mike Evans gets there. He's a start for me. And then K-Dot, real quick, I want to talk about just because he's tight end 22 in the consensus rankings, but I actually think I would put him probably a little bit higher, more close to 15, 16. I think he's got an opportunity to be a low-end tight end 1 to a high-end tight end 2. He's tight end 21 on the season. Slow start with just 1 grab for 5 yards for the first 2 games. But he's had 17 targets and 13 grabs for 99 yards over the last 2 weeks and tight end 8 in PPR formats over that time. I like
It's
K-Dot
funny you
this
bring
week.
that up because I have him as tight end 13.
Yeah.
I thought you said it perfectly when tight end 2 with tight end 1 upside.
Yep.
I mean, volume. If he's going to continue to get that kind of volume, you got to love it.
Yep. I think he's a good play this week.
Flipping it over to the other side of the ball, Atlanta starting sits. We got Atlanta's offense, 22nd in points scored, 22nd in rushing yards, 17th in passing yards. Tampa Bay defense, 9th in points allowed, 22nd in rushing yards, and 16th in passing yards allowed. Moving on for the Atlanta offense, quarterback 20 on the week, Kirk Cousins. He's a sit for me and one quarterback. He's a sit for me because he's a sit for me in Superflex unless I have to play him. We haven't seen the Kirk Cousins we saw in Minnesota yet. Hopefully that'll come further along the more that offense gets games together. Running back 7, Bijan Robinson. He's a start. He's got 55 carries for 224 yards with only 1 touchdown on the season. He has added the 15 receptions and 135 yards, but for a lot of people's running back 1, I certainly would have expected more at this point, but he's still a start. Tyler Algier is a sit, but you got to love the way he runs. He's going to get an angry run once in a while.
Because 100%.
That guy is not afraid of contact. And the only other start I have is Drake London. He's got 20 receptions, 200 yards, 2 TDs on the air. Not great. You're looking at 5 receptions and 50 yards and a touchdown. You're looking at the 5 receptions, 250 yards every week. It's just getting that touchdown every other week. You'd like to see a little bit more. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 32 on the week. He's still a sit, as is Ray McLeod and Kyle Pitts. You got nothing for him out of last week in fantasy. He's a sit for me unless you have no other choice. And unfortunately, I look back in the Scott Fishbowl draft that you and I both participated in to see who I could have drafted in round 4, because my round 4 pick was Mark Andrews, and obviously I haven't been happy with that. And I looked at guys that I could have took, but 3 picks later was Pitts. So, I wasn't the only one who made a mistake in round 4. But anything you would change for Atlanta starting sits?
No, I think you're dead on. It's funny you talk about Scott Fish because I took a tight end in round 4 as well, and I got Dalton Kincaid and came back in round 5 and got Josh Allen. Thought that stack was going to be amazing this year. And Kincaid's another tight end that has not performed at the level we thought he would. But to have consensus rankings have Kyle Pitts at tight end 18, you're talking about the low level of play we see in the tight end position this year. It's unbelievable. I mean, you feel like there's something wrong in this, and I hate to say it, but the 6 inches between the ears, like the effort that he gives you, he doesn't give you anything in the blocking game, so it's tough to keep him on the field. He almost has to be offline, as far as
Which
not
he
playing.
is most of. I mean,
which he is, yeah.
Yeah, and he's not able to separate. It's just not been fun to watch.
It's not there, yeah.
No. Hey, let's get to Blake's question. Blake wants to know: is it dumb to start Bucky and Rachaad White, or should I start Antonio Gibson? Antonio Gibson, if you listen to some of the talk this week, obviously Ramondre Stevenson's been struggling with the fumbles. He's had one in every game so far this year. So you heard a little talk of Antonio Gibson possibly taking the lead role. I don't expect that to happen. I think that's more you're looking at talk of trying to motivate Ramondre. So I don't hate having to start both those guys from Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I don't either. Atlanta's defense is 25th in rushing yards allowed. I mean, there's an opportunity there for both those backs to be relevant. We saw them almost at a 50-50 split last week, and I think that this is one of those weeks where if those are your options, I would start those 2 over putting Antonio Gibson in over either one of those guys.
Right. We've seen the volume with the 2 guys from Tampa Bay. All we've gotten for Antonio Gibson is coach speak, so I'm going to continue to ride the guys who are getting volume. Ryan, Kincaid has let me down this year with no true number 1. Yeah, he's let a lot of people down. And I don't know, it gets to a point where it looks like a problem league-wide. Early on, we even had a discussion like, hey, should we talk about what the too high defense is doing to the passing game in the NFL? Because we haven't gotten much. It's gotten a little bit better, but obviously the production of the passing game is not what we would hope for.
No, he's only got 13 grabs for 132 yards and a touchdown on the season. It has not been a good season for tight ends. We talked about that. I think Andrew Cooper, who's a tight end guy on Twitter, he talked about it. I think he said there's been at least 12 tight ends averaging 12 points a game in PPR formats. I might have to be a little bit off on this, and this year you've only got 5 of them.
Yeah.
That's how far down the production for tight ends have been this year in fantasy football.
And this happened to be the summer where I was going to go tight end bully in every league. And if it was a league that I did not have a tight end, that has been a dynasty league for a couple of years, I was making trades for Kincaid. I was making trades for McBride. I was trying to make trades for Laporta. And you really haven't seen much production from any of them, McBride being the best of the bunch, but it still has been what we would have hoped. Quincy's got a question. Let's throw that up there. We got, do I drop Mooney or Braylon Allen?
Jerome Ford.
Okay, so we've got they want to know, sounds like they want to get Jawan Jennings. And of those guys, who would you drop, Coach? If it's redraft.
Well, we both are huge on Braylon Allen, and we're starting to see him get more volume. So I'm certainly not. I love handcuffing other teams' running backs, but if you've got Braylon Allen, it'd be hard for me to drop that guy. Someone's going to sweep him up quick. Of those four, Xavier Leggett with Andy Dalton might have some opportunity with
and
Adam
he has
Thielen
got
out.
more opportunity the last couple of weeks.
So
if
like
you're
him.
looking at a guy, you'd probably look at Jerome Ford because you're seeing
Chubb's
Nick
coming
Chubb
back.
coming back. So if I were to make that move, I would drop Ford.
Yeah, it's Ford or Mooney for me, and I'm okay dropping either one of those guys. So if you want, you can flip a coin and figure out heads is Ford and tails is Mooney, because it doesn't really matter. Those other two guys I'm hanging on to.
I guess whichever spot you're not as good at, meaning if you're stronger at wide receiver than running back, then keep Ford. If you're stronger at running back, keep keep Mooney. Coach, that's about it for this show. We got another one. We got another one.
Let's get it.
Get all the questions. We've got Rodgers or Minshew, and do I drop Pitts for Kmet? I'm going Rodgers over Minshew, and I would make that move. I would drop Pitts for Kmet.
Yeah, it's crazy we're saying that, man. Pitts for Kmet when Kmet's got, the receivers in Chicago that they have, but I would take Kmet over Pitts as well. And I'm starting Rodgers over Minshew as well.
Appreciate you coming in, Coach. Everyone else, thank you so much for coming in. Again, Sunday morning. Go ahead. We got a couple more questions. Let's just get to the questions. Hey, they're the people. We're here for the people.
That's right, man.
Ryan's got a little comment. He would keep them all but Ford. Yes, Jennings is getting everyone else back. I get it, but I like it. Drop Ford. Moving on, we got to trade Kamara for Pacheco and Puka. Dynasty. I would not do that if we're talking dynasty.
Trade Kamara for Pacheco and Puka?
Correct.
You wouldn't take Pacheco and Puka over Kamara in dynasty?
Okay, timeout. I wasn't sure. I was saying I didn't want the Kamara side. So yes.
Yes. Okay. We're on the same page. Yes. I would absolutely. You're not going to sell Kamara at a higher value than you'll get for him right now. So if I'm going to get Pacheco and Puka long term, I would take those two in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. Now it's going to hurt this year.
Yep. It's going to hurt this year for sure.
But yes. Yes. Good job. We like that trade. Ryan. Yes. Everyone's in agreement. So there we go. Let's take that trade, make it easy.
We got to get Ryan on the show one of these days as a guest, man. We got to get him on here.
Come on in. Well, we can send him an invite anytime. Maybe he can say names like Tua and say all the names that I mess up for him.
And Njoku and Dario Ogunbowale and all the other names you struggle with that I seem to rattle them off.
Yeah. All right, Coach. Appreciate you coming in. We hope to see all of you Sunday morning, 8:30 Pacific time. That'd be 11:30 or just an hour and a half before kickoff we'll be in. Except for this week, there is a London game. So we will not have start sit. You can expect to see a tweet from Coach, as Coach loves to put that out. So maybe late Saturday night, one of us will put out who our start and sits are for that London game. And then who would you drop, Odunze or Rice for Wicks? I'd probably have to drop Rice because hopefully it's not a long injury. I don't know if I would make that move.
Yeah, I wouldn't make that move right now. I mean, I think if you're talking about this week and we're too early in the fantasy season, I don't care if you're 0-4, there's still a chance for you to rattle off some wins. So if this is redraft, I'm not dropping either one of those guys because I'm going to hang up. We need to find out what's happening with Rice. If Rice is going to be out, obviously, for the season, it's a redraft league, and obviously you're dropping Rice. But if he's going to get back at some point, you're going to hate yourself for making the drop. But
there we go. Thank you for tuning in, though, Nico or Nikel. Always appreciate you coming in. Coach, appreciate you. Everyone else, we'll see Sunday morning, 8:30 Pacific time.
Thanks, guys.